Welcome to this special episode of Light On, Light Through. I'm Paul Levinson. If you are watching this as a video and you need to drive your car somewhere, there'll be a link on the video page and it will show you how to just listen to it, which is the safe thing to do if you're driving. Never a good idea to watch a video and drive at the same time. Or if you are listening to this and you'd like to see us not quite in the flesh, but through Zoom, there'll be a link on that audio podcast page where you can go to the video. So our guest today, or actually my guest today, is a Polish poet and member of a really hot and up-and-coming rock band, Trupa Trupa, by the name of Grzegorz Kwiatkowski. I've been pronouncing that name as much as I can because I like to get it at least mostly right. Let me just tell you a little bit about how Grzegorz and I came to meet and know each other. My son, Simon Levinson, is deputy music editor for Rolling Stone. And I guess it was a little over a month ago, I read a really great review that he wrote about Trupa Trupa's new album. In fact, it's just been released, B-flat A. And in particular, one of the members of Trupa Trupa, Grzegorz, who in addition to being a rock musician, is also a poet. And he is not only a poet, but his most recent book of poetry is about the Holocaust. So that really impressed me. And Grzegorz and I got to know each other. And we had planned to do this interview a little later in the month of March. But with the Russian invasion of Ukraine, I wanted to get Grzegorz and his voice out to the world. It's already out to the world, but I wanted to contribute a little more and get that voice out to the world as soon as possible. So let me begin just by asking you, Grzegorz, how are you doing? How are you holding up under this incredible pressure? Poland, of course, is a next door neighbor of Ukraine. Ukrainian refugees are pouring into Poland. There's no telling what crazy thing Russia might do next. So how are you doing? How are you feeling? What are you thinking these days?
Firstly, I'm super happy that you invited me, and I have to say that it's very hard event for me. Maybe it will be the hardest meeting for me because I was talking about it for many weeks in different places about the risk of Russian invasion, but I didn't realize it will happen. So it's very hard. I'm in a deep shock, and for many weeks, even during the Trupa Trupa concerts that happened few moments ago in Western Europe, I was talking from time to time from the stage something about that. But I was hoping that it will not happen, but it happened, and I'm devastated totally, and it's oh, you know, it's like a nightmare, and of course being so close to the Ukraine is even more frightening in some way. It's also, I'm always the person who is trying to find some light in the tunnel, and this now it's really dark, but on the other hand, this big solidarity that is happening right now in the Western world is this kind of a light I'm searching for. So So on one hand, I'm devastated when I see that people are dying, and when I see that this cynical murderer Vladimir Putin is doing these things. And the point is that he was doing it for many, many years. That you know, it's there were a lot of books, a lot of documentary movies, a lot of his psychological portraits, and he was a murderer for many, many years. I guess you know, when he came to the power by this manipulation with Chechen war, I think it was obvious that he is a real murderer in a Stalin way and the worst way. But the point is that the Western world didn't, you know, didn't react. They always reacted in very almost nice way. You know, like it was kind of a message. Please feel invited. You know, don't worry. Please continue. And now in Western Europe, there are a lot of people, especially from left-wing people, and I guess I'm one of the people from the left wing that were not always, but a lot, very often criticize the policy of United States, the USA policy. And I was also very angry on the intervention in Iraq and Afghanistan. But the point is that I guess that now the situation looks like that Joe Biden and this big pressure of USA on Western Europe and on Russia is a kind of a miracle of a goodness. And I think that his pressure and USA Secret Service pressure really is kind of a game changer. And even Germany changed their mind. And you know, I've got a lot of mixed feelings in the way that this is the horror. This is the, you know, I hope it will end in the next few days, but I don't think so. So, but the point is that very usually in these times of transgression, you can see the faces without masks. And for example, for me, the reaction of Germany, or maybe lack of reaction of Germany for a few weeks, it was a big, very, very big disappointment in a moral way. That they were so corrupted, that they politicians were so corrupted by Russian money. And of course, Vladimir Putin was a Stasi agent in the eastern of Germany. So I've got a lot of thoughts. I've got a lot of, you know, mixed feelings. I try still to remember this, my motto after my son was born. So I mean, all you need is love, and I really think that, you know, all we need is love. But on the other hand, you know, what can I say? You know, what should I say to someone from Ukraine who is fighting against Russian forces? You know, if I could say to him, you know, don't fight with them. You know, please try to do it in a Gandhi pacifistic, non-violence way. You know, I don't know if I could say something like that to someone who is protecting his family from someone like Hitler. So I'm devastated. I'm still trying to think about positive solution, and the big unification of Western world, big moral unification, is something like a miracle. But I'm waiting for the biggest miracle, and the biggest miracle would be, you know, that the Russian people would defeat Vladimir Putin, because I think that this is the moment that they should do something with him, or he should step out. I don't know, but you know, I hope it will happen. You know, not even next few days, but maybe in next, you know, 48 hours. But please tell me, what are your thoughts? Because I'm much more younger than you, and this is the point. My grandfather had a history. He was a tragic history. He was a prisoner of concentration camp. But I'm the third generation, so in some way I can feel that it's easy to speak for me in the way that, you know, all you need is love, and about the Gandhi non-violence way. But you know, I can say a lot of great, beautiful things, but they are maybe too spiritual in a flat theoretical way. So please tell me, what are your thoughts, and what are your predictions, and yeah.
Sure. Well, you and I are more alike than we really should be, because I'm much older than you. I'm like 300 years old. You're a young guy. I have grandkids who are the age of your son. So, we really do come from different generations, but amazingly, we are a lot alike. I mean, just one thing that occurred to me as you were talking, the fear that Putin, this current Hitler, has put into the minds not only of Ukrainians, but people around the world. You, of course, in Gdansk are very close to the literal Russian troops. But, as you probably know, Putin opened his mouth yesterday and started threatening again using nuclear weapons. And, we live here in New York City. We have no intention of ever leaving New York. And, New York City, this goes back to the 1960s when I was a kid, and the Cuban Missile Crisis. We knew, and I knew back then, I was, 15, 16 years old. And I knew that if there had been a nuclear exchange between the US and then the USSR, that New York City would be one of the targets. That's what they would be aiming for. So no one in the world can just relax in the face of this aggression by a madman. I heard that the president of Brazil, Bolsonaro, by the way, another fascist, a friend of Trump, a friend of Putin, that he was saying to Brazilians, hey, you should come home. If you're in Russia to Brazil, you'll be safe here. No place is safe. And I think that is something that we all need to recognize. The other thing, and this is why I think your very important book, Crops, is so relevant to this. When we say that Putin is another Hitler, that's not just a metaphor. That's not just a way of, criticizing him because he stupidly said that that the leadership in Ukraine is neo-Nazis and obviously Zelensky is Jewish. It's much deeper than that. What it is really is what Adolf Hitler tapped into, and what you explored in devastating and very effective poetry that brought tears to my eyes when I read it in Crops, that never died. That spirit is still very much alive in every totalitarian who is now alive in this world. And although we could talk for days about Donald Trump, you know what? He's no different. He has no respect for the truth. He makes up lies anytime it suits him. The only thing that restrained Trump is, we have such a robust democracy in the United States. It was hard for him to do some of the things that he might have wanted to do. So when he, for example, said, I'm going to put up a wall in our southern border, and we're going to get all these Mexicans and all these evil people who are trying to come into our country, he couldn't quite get away with that. And it was easier for his friend Putin to get away with that. But the real question is, and let me mention something I've been struggling with, and then I'd be interested in what your thoughts are. And for those of you who are interested, we'll get back to Grzegorz book of poetry and some of his music in a few minutes. But, as you well know, and as anyone who knows me knows, I'm 74 years old, and, I'm in okay physical shape, but, a part of me, and my wife Tina certainly wouldn't want to hear me say this, but a part of me feels like right now, getting on a plane and going over to Ukraine. And you know what? I've never fired a gun in my whole life. I hate guns. I've never fired a gun. I've never fired a rifle. I think here in the United States, one of the problems, one of the illnesses that we have here are too many guns. A gun killed John Lennon. You know, guns do horrible things. But nonetheless, a part of me honestly wants to do something to basically fight those Russians and get those Russians the hell out of Ukraine. And since I know I'm not going to do that, I feel I have to try to do everything I can in my power, whatever that power is, to help the Ukrainians and in any way that I can undermine the Russians. I already blocked, by the way, on Facebook, a couple of Russian accounts who they were my friends. I don't know if those accounts were hacked. You know, they came in and they started talking nonsense, you know, lying about, you know, what's going on there. So I just blocked them. But I think that that's what the world has to do. And but you are in a much more dangerous situation than I am for the reasons that we talked about. And so, for example, are you at this point writing new poetry? Is Trupa Trupa thinking of doing new music? Because that is what you are doing with your lives to basically help Ukraine and combat the Russians.
Yeah, it's very complicated issue in the way that, yeah, of course I'm writing a poetry and we are composing music, but the point is that we were always on. I was always more or less I was writing about this kind of stuff. I mean about genocide, about human ability to hate each other and killing each other. So in some way I am doing the thing I was doing earlier, and I'm just not stopping. But the point is that and Trupa Trupa is also keep going, and we will come to USA at the end of April. But so we. You know, we are doing our thing, and one of our friends from the band, Rafał Wojczal, who is playing on the keys and the guitar, now he's on the Polish-Ukraine border in Przemyśl, and he's a photo reporter and photographer. So he's, I think, helping in a big way by exposing this tragedy. But the point is that my heart is with Ukraine, but my heart is, you know, with human beings, in the way that you know, today the Ukraine ambassador in UN read this message. I don't know if you hear that, the message of the Russian soldier who sent it to his mother, you know. So the war is tragedy, and the war is tragedy on both sides. That's what I want to say. Of course we have to protest, of course we have to say, to show stop sign to Putin. It's obvious. I don't want to discuss with that, it's obvious. But the point is how. And of course I dream about Gandhi non-violence, pacifistic way, but of course it's a bad idea, right? It wouldn't be, it wouldn't make any impression on Putin, right? His language is a language of violence and language of power. So if the Western world wouldn't show him this language, he would just laugh. So and I can see for 2 or 3 days that he's very nervous. And anyway, I think that he didn't expect this kind of reaction. I think that he really thought that Western world will react in the normal way that Western world reacted in the past few years. So I think he's really in a deep shock that the world now is really mad. But the point is that, you know, I don't know what to say I don't know what to think about even murdering someone as an act of resistance. You know what I mean? But I don't know. Of course, I am against killing. Of course, I'm against every way of humiliation and suffering. But this is big tragedy, and everyone is losing, and people of Russia, the people in Russia are also losing. So I can just pray for changing of power in Russia. I think it would be the best scenario. But the question is if the Russia has got, I guess that Putin destroyed whole opposition, and so he's a really very similar, not only to Hitler, but maybe he's more similar to Stalin actually. But what can we do? Of course, we can, we can make this gesture of solidarity from our hearts, and we can make these spiritual bridges, and we can send our money and to these people, and we can push on our politicians to not stop, to not give up. But I think, because you said that you would like to go there and fight, so I think I would have a problem in the way that maybe, I would have a problem with taking a gun, for example, and to yeah. But as I told you, I'm from different generation, and I think that I'm in some way from spoiled generation that is very that my life was really a good life in the way of circumstances, and so maybe it's very egoistic from my side. Maybe I just think about myself in a very great way, but it's just the thing that I'm afraid, that I'm very egoistic, and I'm just afraid to commit my life to other people. But I'm just telling you the whole truth from my heart, what I'm thinking about. So I will not pretend that I'm a hero, because I'm not. But I also think, or I hope so, that I'm doing my job in the right. You know what I mean? That I think that this is my rifle. I think that this is my gun, and I think that I'm doing my thing. But I hope so. I hope that this is a real gun, and but yeah, I don't know what to say more. But I don't feel comfortable in this situation, and this is very tragic situation, and that's why I told you at the very beginning that in some way this is the most important and difficult conversation for me, conversation with you. And when you proposed to make it earlier because of this tragedy, of course I said immediately yes, let's do it. But I was really afraid in the way that, what should I say right now in this real horror when it's happening right now, and when I'm watching the news and I see killed people, and I've got tears in my eyes, and I pretend I don't have a tears because my son, for example, is watching me. So I don't want to, I don't want this. I don't want to spread this war atmosphere in my house, for example, because he's 3.5 years, so he doesn't understand. So I don't want to make him suffer. But on the other hand, maybe we shouldn't close his eyes on this kind of tragedy. I don't know. So as you can see, I've got one big I don't know mode right now, but my heart is open, so I can't lie and I can pretend that I'm an expert. But I just hope that my writing, and I keep writing, and today I was writing, and tomorrow I'll be writing, that it's helping in some way, and this way is a way of showing atrocities and tragedy in a very realistic way, but also in some poetic way, in the way that there is a place for a reader to, in some way I'm making a trap for a reader, just to, it's kind of a moral trap, just to take someone inside this in some way cruel world. But the point is not that I want to write some very drastic images just to make us Hollywood horror effects. But I think that this is the truth. And for many years, for example, in Poland, many people told me that I shouldn't write about the past because the past is the past. And they told me that I should write about something else. That there were the times of big wars is over, and that in some way that I'm escalating the suffering, and this is my just my imagination, you know, that I'm just feeling that I feel a pleasure of writing about this kind of tragedies. Of course, it wasn't true. I was just writing about these tragedies from the past because this is my history of my family, and so I was just doing my thing. But the point is that the tragedies are going on non-stop every year, not only in Ukraine. And I don't want to relativize this stuff, but you know, every time there is a big tragedy in the world, unfortunately, but the eye of camera don't see it. And now I'm happy that the eye of camera and eye of the world is seeing that. But the world is still not a good place for many of people who are suffering. And I hope that this big tragedy will change something for better.
Well, I certainly hope so too. Let me first say that I love the fact that you want your words to be your rifle. That's wonderful. That's truly your artist's heart speaking. And before we go into that a little more, let me just make two, I guess, sort of historical points. One, as you know, and probably most of my viewers know, I'm a science fiction writer. One of the themes of science fiction, ever since I started reading it, is if you could go back in a time machine and kill Adolf Hitler when he was a baby, I mean, it's a horrible thing to even think about. Would you do it? Right? And you know,
yeah,
there's no easy answer to that question, because what human being could kill a baby, even if you knew that that baby was going to grow up and become Adolf Hitler? And when you're saying you can't pick up a gun or a rifle, and the truth is, again, you and I are not that much different. What I was telling you is what I feel like doing. And I've never fired a gun, never fired a rifle. I probably couldn't do that either. It's just what I'm feeling like doing. But you're saying that it is really part of that almost paradox that time travel and science fiction have explored. You know, on the one hand, it's wrong to kill a human being. It's certainly wrong. It's horrible beyond horrible to kill a baby. But if the baby is Adolf Hitler, you know, and it's those questions, and I know that you've studied philosophy, that really test our ethical knowledge. The other historical point I want to make, and then let's talk a little more about crops. Have you ever heard of he used to be known as a protest singer. I guess nowadays you call him a singer-songwriter. His name was Phil Ochs, O-C-H-S. So first name Phil, P-H-I-L, second name O-C-H-S. And back in the 1960s, although Dylan was a little ahead of Ochs in terms of being known, there was a time in the mid-60s when Phil Ochs was right up there with Bob Dylan. And he wrote songs like I Ain't a Marching Anymore, White Boots, Marching in a Yellow Land. That was his song about the US and the terrible things we did in Vietnam. One of Phil Ochs's masterpieces is a song called The Crucifixion, in which Ochs talks in this song about the pleasure people had in finding out every detail of the assassination of John F. Kennedy. On the one hand, they thought it was horrible, but on the other hand, they wanted to know, what was Jackie wearing? Was that like a little bit of blood on Jackie's, you know, dress or whatever? I mean, and Phil Ochs, and again, he was a philosopher in addition to being a songwriter. He said, that's because people get pleasure in the downfall of heroes, which is a really horrible thing to contemplate. We build people up, we, the population at large, only to wait for when they fall, and then we applaud that. But something else that Oakes did, which is not known quite as well as what I just mentioned, and this relates to what we're talking about, he came out with an album in 1967 called Pleasures of the Harbor. And this, again, was the height of the Vietnam War, which, by the way, I protested against. I was tear gassed in Washington, but so, and eventually our protesting did some good. But this album, Pleasures of the Harbor, including that song, had really no protest songs on it. It was all just beautiful songs. It was just beautiful lyrics. It was basically love stories. And in the liner notes to the album, Phil Oakes said, "In such an ugly time, the only true protest is beauty." And that always struck with me. And I think if you're talking about writing poetry, and I know that you've struggled with this, you're writing words that are beautiful and it gives you pleasure to write, but they sometimes can be describing terrible things. How do you do that? And I think Oakes's knowledge and his explanation of why he did this album, not of happy songs, but not songs that were protesting, in some sense relates to this question. You mentioned your grandfather was in a concentration camp, and that's what motivated you to write the poems in Crops. Let me just ask you a question, which I think I asked you at some other point, but it fascinates me because, as you know, I'm a songwriter myself, but I've never really written much poetry. What is it when you are writing words that gets you to make the decision? Are they going to be lyrics for a song like Uniform? Or are they going to be words in a poem such as what we see in Crops? I mean, my guess is you probably don't know when you first start writing, but what is it that sort of guides your decision in that situation?
I think that of course music is music is a world of poetry and poems are, these are not two separate worlds. But the point is that when I write a poem and you are reading my poem, for example, it should be, everything should be there. The music, in the poem, the music should be done in more direct and more minimalistic way. And when I write something to Trupa Trupa and I sing something, and I've got a band, I've got my friends, and we've got a lot of other sounds. So I don't need this kind of sharpness as in the very bold, tiny poem. And I think that anyway, I think that my lyrics and my poetry is very similar to each other in the way that it's very minimalistic and it's all about intuition. I mean that, for example, the Uniform song, I was just singing these lyrics and this text, and I didn't know what does it mean. In the way that I just thought maybe it's something good, and I'm always believing in my intuition, and after a few months I'm just checking if I was right or I was wrong. But it's very beautiful what you said about beauty, and because I really, in some way, I believe that goodness and also beauty will save the world or save the souls and protect the souls. And I think for me, the very important component of a life is a beauty. I mean that there are a lot of tragedies all around the world. And for example, I had this family tragedy and the grandfather who was a broken person because of a state of trauma. And in some way, from the very young age, I really trusted in the art, in the big way, in the way that as a religious thing, that, for example, every day I have to listen to Magic Flute by Mozart or to Winterreise by Schubert or to some Glenn Gould transcription of Wagner. But I need the power of beauty just to keep going, just to keep moving, like the sun, I just needed to fight in some way with a evil, brutal world. Of course, it's a very delicate process in the way that if you're putting these beauty vibes into the very tragic historical events, that then there is a big risk that you will make a melodramatic, kitschy stuff from that. You know, that you will make a Hollywood kitschy thing from this horror. And that's why I love so much Glenn Gould, because Glenn Gould showed me the way of kind of anti-melodramatic way of playing and singing, and in some way his art is a art of minimalistic emotions. But of course, if something is very minimalistic, then it's really, after all, very powerful and big. But he showed me that when I'm writing about such big tragedies, I should be very you know, I shouldn't have a big emotions. I should be as cold as I can in some way. You know what I mean? That I should be as delicate and as cold as I can, because if I will have too big emotions, then in some way I can use these tragic topics, you know, for my, you know, imagination or something like that, or for some special fireworks effects, and it would be one big disaster. But yeah, I think that the beauty is a really very important component of the world, and I really believe that the beauty and goodness are saving us every day. And yeah, and for example, love songs, you know, they are, for example, early Beatles and they love songs. I think that in some way this is very, early Beatles is for me like a punk rock band, you know. They would, it was really punk rock, you know, early Beatles, and this, it's simple, catchy 2-minute songs about love, and they were, you know, it was a real revolution. And I think these were one of the biggest art statements till now, and I can compare them with works of Schubert, and I think that it all came from some, in some way, open-hearted and open-minded, quite simple people from Liverpool. And this is this kind of a miracle. So, for example, now when we see the Ukraine and President Zelensky, and we can just compare it, you know, to the David and Goliath, you know, and I can see this in this way, that art is some way similar to this very rare but still very great situation in history when someone small is defeating the big evil, and I think that it happens really rare. It should happen more often, but I think that, by the way, Zelensky is an artist. We shouldn't forget about it. That I guess he's an actor and comedian, right?
Yep. We had,
Yeah,
by the way,
so
here.
this is very.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, please.
Oh, okay. Great. Can you hear me? I was just going to say, we had a guy by the name of Pat Paulson, who was jokingly running for president against Richard Nixon. This was back, I guess, in 1972, before Nixon got thrown out of office. And of course, here in the United States, the comedian Paulson got no votes. We didn't have a sufficient sense of humor. But I think it is notable, at the point you're making, that Zelensky, one of the reasons why he's doing such a brilliant job is that he has the sense of a comedian. He can see the absurdity in the world. And he has an incredibly quick mind, which comedians have. So one of his lines, which basically galvanized the world, you know, the United States says, hey, we'll get you out of there, we'll bring you to a safe place. And his now famous retort, I don't need a ride, I need ammunition. I mean, that's brilliant. You know, that could be just
it was great.
Yeah, it could be a complete Trupa Trupa lyric, right? It's that one line. Let me, by the way, say, because I didn't want to forget to say this.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're completely right about the early Beatles. every time I hear an early Beatles song, which I hadn't heard in a while, just the other day I heard John Lennon, the early Beatles, not a second time. Not a second time. You know, Lennon is basically crying about a girl that basically broke his heart. And now she's come back. And basically, it's just so good and it's so catchy and it makes the point, you know, so clearly. Um, so I think you're right. What we see in the early Beatles is a sort of rawness and a direct heart and soul expression that to some extent was a little more contrived as it went on. And, you know, I mean, I'll make a confession. And in fact, I even wrote an article about this. The first few times I heard Sergeant Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, I didn't like it. I said, what happened to the Beatles? You know, they've gone off the deep end. You know, I want to hear at least a little more, you know, rubber soul. I've just seen a face I can't forget. You know, there's nothing like that, you know, on Sergeant Pepper. But eventually I came to see the, you know, the beauty there as well. But you could argue that the more sophisticated.
But I could. Yeah, but I totally agree with you. I've got the same story with Beatles in the way that of course Sergeant Pepper is great and later albums are great, but they are not so special as these very early genial super short songs. You know, that they are just pure beauty and pure miracles. And of course there are a lot of great songs after all, and in the late period, but these early songs, like, you know, they are like sunbeams. You know, they are just they are incredible. Yeah, and after all, you know, they were making more complicated things, and they were make some experiments, and it's all good and all great. But early Beatles were like, you know, like a miracle.
Yeah, they were. And, you know, you talk about world events and, you know, obviously you weren't born then. But, you know, my wife and I often talk about the fact that, you know, literally pretty much the same week that John F. Kennedy was assassinated, maybe a day or two later, we suddenly began hearing the Beatles. And it's almost as if that early music, you know, I Want to Hold Your Hand, She Loves You, Love Me Do, you know, that series of songs, Please Please Me, they were almost the medicine that we needed, at least as kids, to get over that horrible tragedy. By the way, I just want to tell our listeners and viewers, if you want to see Trupa Trupa, not live, I mean, you should come to see them when they're live, but there's a great video of Trupa Trupa on YouTube. I think it's, they're singing a song called Another Day. And it's not Paul McCartney's song. It's just another day. No, it's not that. It's Trupa Trupa's own song, and it's also a very powerful song. And you can see these four guys really getting into it, and they have some pretty good harmony there and some good guitar playing. So I highly recommend that as well.
Thank you. Thank you.
I just want to throw another name in here again for those people, you know, if you're not familiar with this great Russian poet, this I think is the arch example of how poetry, as far as the world knows, and they haven't yet read Crops, but this would be the arch example of how a poet can capture some horrible moment. It would probably be Yevtushenko's Babi Yar poem, which was about the massacre of Jewish people that took place, in fact, in the Ukraine. You know, ironically, Yevtushenko was Russian. And unfortunately, he's not alive today. He wouldn't have put up for a second with what Putin was doing. He would be denouncing Putin. In any case, let's wrap this up and talk a little bit. I just got a note that our internet connection is unstable, but it may be the Russians are launching a cyber attack on this recording. Now
If you are listening, yeah. Please stop. Yeah.
right. So I was glad to hear you say you're hoping to continue your tour. You come to the United States in April. I know you have other uh, venues as well. Is that right? For people here in the United States?
Oh, now the connection is really low.
Uh,
So
I'll,
I heard second word.
okay. I'll say it again. I was just saying, I heard you say earlier that you hope to be in the United States with Trupa Trupa at the end of April. So that part of the tour is still on at this point.
Yeah, yeah. We will play in 10 or 11 cities in USA, and of course also in New York. So I hope we will meet there, and I will be very happy to meet you. And I hope that the nuclear war will not be, it will not start before that. But the point is that I hope that the Ukraine will win in next few days. So this is most important, not Trupa Trupa USA tournée. So fingers crossed for this happy. And I just wanted to say one thing about Putin and about, because when I'm writing about past or about tragedies or about genocide, I'm always interested in when I make a research about the circumstances of the landscape of evil. I mean that if we will say about Putin that he's a crazy madman, I think it's too easy. You know what I mean? That it's too easy in the way that he's from the moon, and but the point is that he's more or less an effect of society that he lived in. That he's effect of very brutal USSR environment, and he's a I just wanted to say that Russia is the people from Russia for many ages they were treated in most humiliating way we can imagine, and of course when for example we all know that if you are experience cruelty very easy, you can be a cruel person, and you can spread this evil all around you, and I don't want to relativize stuff, but I just wanted to say that that he's not a genial crazy person. He's one of the part of very cynical, corrupted Stalin machinery, and that I also wanted to say that he's not the only one. There are a lot of these kind of people, for example, in many parts of the world, and we should watch out, and we should every time when someone is breaking the law, and every time someone is breaking the human rights, and every time, we should always watch out for this kind of people, because he really did that for so many times that he really thought that he can do it, till his last days. And really, Western world gave him so many, green light, and just kind of a please feel invited message that I think that now he's really in deep shock that the Western world is protesting. But I just wanted to say that evil thing is something we've got inside of us. That's the biggest point. What I wanted to say, and this is I've got two ideas in the way. The first is, all we need is love, and the second thing is that firstly we should, look at the mirror, and we should just think about ourselves in the way every day when you're going, you can just think about your actions during the day. Did you make harm to your son, wife, the worker, someone from the band, anyone, were you nice, or maybe you should be more nice, or maybe you were lying. For example, lying. This is the real evil machinery, lying. I think that more you're lying, more you're isolated, and more you're creating your inner world full of more of lies, and then you have to act more and more aggressively and full of, and in a way of full of violence. But I just wanted to say that in some way, this is my feeling, that we've got this kind of Putins inside of us, and we should watch out not only of these kind of figures as him, but also we should just try to be a better people every day, and yeah, that's what I want to say.
Well, I'm glad you said that, and I agree with that completely. The problem, I think, and you can say that in this related way, the problem is power and how people fall in love and become attached to whatever power they have. And even if they're basically a decent person, they don't want to give up that power. And if you think about it, the miracle of democracy has always been that you can be the most powerful person in the country, but the results of an election can just take you out of office. And there you see the problem with Trump here in the United States. He couldn't take the fact that he lost. And this is Putin's problem. He is in power, and he cannot accept the fact that he could ever be out of power. And this is something, I think, completely right, that all people suffer from. And the most powerful I've ever been in my life, I was chair of my department at Fordham University for about 6 years, about 15 years ago. And the way the policy is at Fordham University, you can only serve 2 terms as chair, 2 3-year terms. And at the end of that second term, a part of me was saying, gee, it's too bad. I should figure out a way I can continue to be chair. But I said to myself, you know what? Let somebody else do it. And this is what is missing with Putin. It's what is missing with all dictators. They love power so much, which I think you're right, all human beings do to some extent, but they love it so much, and their personality is such that they can't give it up. And so what we're seeing with Putin, he's been in power for over 20 years, and he's not listening to anybody. And you're saying you hope that the Ukrainians win in the next 2 days, not with Putin still in power, but we'll see, what happens. Go ahead.
Yeah. But yeah, I totally agree. But I think that it's not only about love of power, but I think it's a fear of responsibility. And I think that more you're lying, and more you made bad actions and evil actions, then you're more afraid of responsibility. And that's the point. I think that they are also very, very afraid of responsibility for their actions. And I think every human being has got this kind of mechanism, even little child that is lying, and he's afraid, did you steal this thing? And you say, no, I didn't do that. And you are afraid that you are lying, and you feel worse and worse and worse. And suddenly, for example, after 2 days, when I was a kid, for example, I remember when I was a kid and I did something wrong, and I lied, and I felt terrible, and after 2 days, and I lied, then I didn't do that. And after 2 days, I said I did that, and I was crying, but it was kind of a relief, relief of a truth and love, that, all right, I did. And I think that these kind of people, as Putin, they live for most of their lives are made from lies, and they are. This is very dark life. I think this is very, very dark biographies. And I think it's not. I think it's not a joyful thing. I think that the point is that they don't love love themselves, and they don't love the others, and I think this is a very dark situation, and a lot of people has got this kind of a problem, but not a lot of people has got this kind of a power, of course, the world power. But this is the, I think that one of the biggest thing is lying really in the world. That and Donald Trump really was the biggest champion in the art of lying in I guess in 100 years history, because what did Donald Trump changed everything in the way that he even didn't pretend. I mean that he just said this is white, and he said no, this is black, and everyone knew that he realized that he's lying, but he didn't have a problem with that. So Donald Trump was kind of a peak. It was one of the most situation I was observing as a adult person, that he was just so good in that, but not good in the way that he was believing in his lies. I think that he didn't believe in his lies. I think he was doing it in most cynical way, with a smile on his face, and for me it was very, very, very sad, and it was very sad few years. And I think that he's common, because a few days ago he was talking with Putin, and he said that Putin is a great peacemaker and something like that. So I think it's all like they are in some way evil clouds, something like that. It's very, 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 very bad in moral way. I'm happy that he's not longer your president, really.
Yeah, we're very happy here too. But one of the things that we've also learned is anything is possible in the future. So here in the United States, we recognize that we have to work very hard, do everything in our power to make sure that Trump doesn't return to office. By the way, just on that point, in case anyone isn't aware of the complex electoral process here in the United States, the only reason that Trump became president at all was because he lost the popular vote, and he won something called the Electoral College, meaning he won a majority of votes in a certain number of states. And it's a totally arbitrary thing. And one of the things the people in America will be trying to do in the years ahead is do away with that sort of loophole in the electoral process, so that it's just a straight vote. Okay, listen, I know that it's later there, 6 hours later. I'm in New York, you're in Gdansk, so it's it's like 11:30 pretty much in Gdansk. This has been a great conversation.
11:30. It's yeah.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it, and I'm going to try to get this both up, the audio and the video, within a couple of hours here in the United States. And just so everybody knows, YouTube generates a transcript on its own, but it's usually a very poor transcript. So what I do for really important interviews such as this is I go over the transcript myself word by word, and I'll try to get it as accurate as possible. So within a few days, you'll find the transcript available on the YouTube channel if you're interested in what we said word for word. Grzegorz?
I just wanted to say one thing, because we didn't speak about it earlier, and now I thought maybe it's right time, because we are talking about Ukraine, about Putin, about morality, and about art, and about pessimism, optimism, and some light in the tunnel. And I thought, all right, because you said that what time is it right now in Gdańsk, and now I realized, Gdańsk. So the Gdańsk, this is very important thing. The Gdańsk is the city where the Second World War started. So this is very tragic, and this big horror started here. But on the other hand, in 80s, in the same city in Gdańsk, this solidarity worker movement was established here in Gdańsk, and solidarity worker movements and Lech Wałęsa destroyed communism in system in Europe. So, and I think that Lech Wałęsa was kind of a Don Quixote figure, and in some way, I think that he was quite similar to Zelensky. Now, when I think about that he really believed, he didn't even didn't realize what is the real risk of his action. But the point is that Gdańsk is in some way very dark city because of the Second World War. But on the other hand, it's very city full of optimism because of this solidarity worker movement, Solidarność. And I think that that's the message, that I think that when we are afraid, this is the biggest victory of evil always. And I'm so happy that yesterday, when Putin said that he made this nuclear alert, and I think that people and Western world didn't react in a way that they were afraid. They just keep moving, keep going, and keep making the bigger sanctions. And it was a big relief for me, because when we would show him that we are afraid, it would be the worst thing, that we are afraid of him, and this would be the biggest victory of evil forces. But we didn't show that we are afraid, and we can't be afraid. We can't be afraid of evil. Of course, it's easy for me to say about it in Gdańsk. If I would be in Kyiv, I guess I would be frightened. So I just want to say that it's easy for me to say about such things, but just please try, all of you who are listening, not to be afraid of evil, both inside of us and outside of us. And we can really deconstruct evil by trying to be better people, and by trying not to lie to ourselves and to each other, to other people. And I think that if we are starting to lie, that is the beginning of big troubles.
Well, I think that's great advice. By the way, let me mention that I've always had a special relationship with Poland, that other than China, more of my books have been translated into Polish than in any other country. And not only that, Poland is the only country that has translated both my nonfiction, my political media writing, but also my science.
I've got it. I've got it. I have to. I will show to your business. Yeah. So I've got it right here. So this is.
I love it. That looks like the.
This is
that's the soft edge. Yeah.
Yeah. This is the first one.
Yeah.
Second
the
one.
Silk Code, right? That's science fiction.
Yeah.
That's another nonfiction book about the cell phone or the smartphone. This is great. I should hire Grzegorz as a publicity agent. Go ahead. show the other one. I love it. This is the Consciousness Plague, which is the sequel to the Silk Code. So, Grzegorz, thank you. I'll send you the check next week for this great publicity work. Thank you.
But I just want. I don't want to go in one monologue at the end, but I just want to say one more time that I'm super thankful to you, Paul, for the miracle of great spiritual connection and a miracle of goodness, because I really think that it's not super hard to make goodness. And for example, for me, our spiritual journey and connection and our emails, and it's got inside this kind of, it's got these joyful vibes, and I'm really happy. I'm sure that I'm a better person because I know you. And I think it's really easy. It's not super complicated. You know, it's that I get your email or I see your face. It's kind of all right. Paul wrote, and I've got a smile on my face. And I think that sometimes things aren't so complicated, and we have to give a chance to these love and friendship vibes, and then things are a bit easier. So thank you, Paul.
Well, listen, thank you. I feel the same way. You've made a real difference in my life. I've told Simon several times, I'm so glad, Simon, that you reviewed that book and brought Grzegorz to my attention. And here's to a better world for everyone. And here's to a continuation of our friendship and our mutual success in everything that we do.
Yeah, and Slava Ukraine, Slava Ukraine. Fingers crossed for peace.
Thank you. Take care.
Take care, people.